Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Woke Wednesdays. We do this every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight, we have the pleasure of having some of the guests and panelists from the Latinx Vice conversation, and they'll have an opportunity to introduce themselves. But if this is your first time tuning into Woke Wednesdays, we do this every single Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please feel free to ask questions or pose any comments. So let's go ahead and jump in. Who would like to start? Say hello, introductions.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Eric Onsen. I'm an organizer with the Dream Defenders. I'm also an artist with the poetry collective called Poetry for the People. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Omilani. I'm the director of founder of Latinx. I'm a singer, songwriter, and an activist para mi gente.
Hello, my name is Joey Morales. I'm the president of Global Indigenous Group, as well as one of the founding members of Indigenous Peoples Movement. I'm a local organizer here, fighting for los pueblos originarios. I'm from Pueblo Pijao, that's an indigenous community in Colombia. For those of you that don't know, I'm not Mexican, and I need to clarify that. I'm Colombian. Pueblo Pijao is my pueblo. I'm very proud of that, so yeah.
So tonight, as you can see, you can probably recognize these guests from the Vice conversation regarding Latinx and political perspectives from Latinx perspectives. And tonight we're going to kind of talk about what that conversation was like. We're going to address things that we wish we could have said on the show. We're going to maybe debunk some of the myths and just things that kind of came out of that. And
Sorry.
so please feel free to ask questions. Please feel free to post comments. We got people saying hello. Chef Steph. Hello. Triple Threat saying hello. This is gonna be good. So let's go ahead and jump in. Again, please feel free just to post your comments, and I'll be asking the panel as we go on. So so one question that I got before the show even started was, how come none of the conservative people are on the show tonight? So how would y'all like to answer that?
Well, I just want to say that we don't give space for fascists. Though that group of people were quite literal fascists. Specifically that Colombian girl, she on live television had no problem saying that indigenous people were on welfare. And out of all the racist things that she said after that they didn't even show. But we just don't have space for that. We don't have room for that. And when I said specifically, and other people in the group said that we're not going to be friends with people who want to deport us, who want to harm us, we weren't kidding. I'm not friends with these people. I don't want to be friends with them. I have my space, they have their space, and that's how we're gonna keep it.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else would like to address that?
I mean, I guess my response to that would be that you gravitate towards whoever you naturally gravitate towards. So in the discussion, we found commonalities and we stayed in touch. So I think that has to do with it also, that we just related to each other.
Absolutely. You want to say anything?
I went to the show thinking I was there to speak to the audience because I figured it would be used as a platform for fascism. So I wanted there to be an alternative, a leftist alternative, not even a liberal alternative, because liberalism really concedes power to fascism oftenly. And like you said, you gravitate to those that you're attracted to, and I would say you gravitate towards those you're naturally in struggle with against oppression. And those people were very oppressive in everything they said and everything they stood for.
Absolutely. So I agree 100% with what they're all saying. And one thing that a lot of people don't know is that if you watched the video, please feel free to tell us your thoughts on what you thought. One of the things a lot of people don't know is that we arrived early at this space.
Yeah.
And we were there for maybe over 4 hours, right, in total. And when we first started, we were all put in a room. And please feel free to jump in. And we're all put in a room, and we were all just kind of told to converse amongst ourselves. And things did get heated.
Yeah.
So for like maybe over an hour, there was just straight up arguing, correct, right?
Yeah.
It was, this Colombian girl, she had, this is what mestizaje does to people. It really creates a space where people are so comfortable with their anti-indigeneity. Before the interview started, she talked about how, in Colombia, we were bonding because we're both Colombian, and she said, in Colombia, Native people don't do shit. They don't do music. Like, Black Colombians do music, but Native Colombians don't do shit. That's what she said. And so I'm just like, You don't know the history of your own country. You don't even know what race you are. First of all, second of all, you don't know the history of your own country. We're talking about vallenato, cumbia. That has indigenous roots. Los gaiteros, like those are indigenous people who play this genre, who got awards. They got an Oscar or a music award. I don't remember which one, but last year for their album in vallenato. Like that is indigenous excellence right there. And Colombia has a lot of it. We have the most native pueblos out of the whole South America. Not a lot of people know about that because again, Maluma, J Balvin, Shakira take up a lot of space in that, and they don't even give credit to like the Afro-Colombians that pioneer music as well. Cumbia, vallenato all have indigenous and African roots, but again, white Latinos.
Salsa too in Colombia.
Yeah. White Latinos take up so much space in this, and that's what Mrs. Zahe does. So again, she's so comfortable in this space, just being, saying anti-native stuff, because no one's gonna tell her anything, because at the end of the day she's Latina, and so Latinos can't be racist towards other Latinos because we're all one race.
Danny Guts is saying, I'm just curious on knowing the Colombian woman's background and what she was raised around in class. I'm
not too interested in discussing that. I'm more interested in clarifying the fact that how we were represented on that Vice video did not show the level of racism, violent settler colonial speak, and enforcement and reassurance that this country stands for imperialism. So I would much rather clarify that we tried to make vivid points that at least I did. And I feel like others did as well, because I feel like we're a united front against all the fucking bullshit that this country has been trying to do to brown and black people for hundreds of years, especially within the last few years. So I don't want to answer that question.
So to that point, so one thing that I got from the panel was that it seemed like Vice definitely had something they were trying to articulate, which was something around Trump. It was very like Trump kind of focused. I don't know if anyone else got that vibe. And one thing that many of us did on the panel was we talked a lot about not being labeled as liberals, but also just not really fucking with either Democrats or Republicans. We were very hard. We're critiquing Obama, we're critiquing Democrats, we're critiquing a lot, but none of that seemed to make the Vice video at all. Correct? Yeah. So what are some things that you think were just completely taken out of the Vice video that you wish maybe would have been left in?
I mean, I have
a whole bunch, but I don't want to talk about that much.
Okay, well, I will say that one thing I did talk about was how Miami Film Festival, they were going to show a movie on the atrocities that ICE was doing during the Obama administration, and I highlighted that because they call me a Democrat, they call me liberal, and I'm not a Democrat, I'm a liberal, I'm a leftist. I will always fight for humanity. And liberals don't do that. All they care about is our vote, and I think that's where it ends. But anyway, this ICE detention center, this guy from Argentina filmed atrocities under Obama, and the day it was supposed to show at Miami Film Festival, he got deported. Like that. His family had no idea until he had already been in Argentina, and that's when his family. And his name is Carlos. I forgot his last name, but during the interview, I said his first and last name, and I said, and I told people this is happening here in Florida. How Democrats and Republicans are both complacent in the deportation of our people. When I say open borders, I mean that. I'm not here to fuck with Democrats. I'm here to say open borders, regardless of what the party is.
Yeah. Anything that you wish was taken
wow,
out?
there's so much. I mean, you're talking about something that we live every day, trying to condense it into a short video. Like there's no way to totally like capture all the expressions, all that. And you talk about what happened before we went downstairs. She kept referring to us as the blacks. Do you know I hate when people say
she did.
The blacks? I am not the blacks. So I mean, there was stuff like that. And the thing about it is, I know like there were times when I was outspoken or maybe said some things that I don't even usually say. But being in that environment, this thing is toxic. It weighs on your spirit.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, it makes you react in different ways. But to me, that's the nature of this administration. Not that politics is ever, like I said in the video, politics is never like for the people. But it seems like it affects us people, and it's very hurtful.
I was wondering if we could kind of unpack what you just said, because I think that was so. It was like very on. You hit the nose of the point on the nose, whatever that expression is.
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, nail on the head. There you go. English is my second language. You said I know we got a couple questions. Someone's asking where's Eric. Eric is right here.
The director's name is Claudio Rojas.
Claudio Rojas?
From Argentina.
And that was that week, right? Or within that
it
month?
was literally a week ago.
It was a week before the
we filmed
Vice
like
interview.
5 months ago, or 4 months ago, and a week from the day we were interviewed, that guy got deported. And again, this has to do with the fact that, you know, Latinidad is sold to white folks.
So what is Latinidad? What is
Latinidad is this concept that we're all Latinos, we all have each other's back, and we're all one people, we all speak Spanish, you know. It erases Afro-Latinos completely from the conversation. It erases Native Latinos, if you want to call them Latinos, but it erases indigenous people, the first pueblos, completely. It assumes that we all speak Spanish when we don't. It also just homogenizes groups of people. There are white Latinos who are literally descendants of slave-owning, genocidal Europeans who went into our lands, killed us, enslaved us, brought African slaves, and then forced us to compete each other by creating a caste system. And then once we got independence from Spain, they remained on the top while the pueblos remained on the bottom. You know, and it's still going on to this day. So I'm supposed to have similarity with white Latinos, with mestizos, with no, that doesn't exist. The Latino community that they sell you on TV just doesn't exist.
So one thing that happened, and thank you for sharing that, because one thing that happened on the Vice video was, I think you said it very well, that we're addressing all these things in a matter of like 3 hours that was recorded. It's impossible to really have this conversation, especially in a detailed way, because it seemed like a lot of stuff was oversimplified, a lot of stuff was just reduced to horrible things. It seemed like we had to legitimize people's humanity like way too often, like just constantly on this panel. And one thing that you said earlier too was that when you were in that space, I know when I was in that space, I got very nervous. I don't hang out with people like that. So I'm not used to having to full on defend someone's humanity in that particular type of way. I hang out with people who mostly think like me. Like, I think many of us do. But I said shit that I went back and I was like, oh shit, I should have said it different. You know, I wish I wouldn't have sounded like that. And I want to say that because it seems that in the YouTube comments, like, people just didn't understand what we were saying at times. Like, as if we were almost not human too. Like people get nervous. This is like some real shit. I get nervous every time I do the show. What do y'all think? Did y'all kind of feel that way too? Or the only one? Was I bugging?
So, you said we had a matter of a few hours to do that, and we did. But I'm a firm believer, no matter how much time we spend trying to prove our humanity or the humanity of those who are oppressed around the world to people who are grounded in oppression, I think it would never work. I think our strategy should be to unite and discuss with each other, and that's why we're here together, and they're not, because to give them a platform would only be to empower them. And I think it is frustrating. I think at some point, talking about homeboy, he was like, yo, the first half of the video, he just was like, yo, man, like, fuck this shit, like, why are you here? And like, that's how I felt, like, why the fuck am I here talking to these people? But then I think the only thing that kept me speaking was the fact that I'm like, well, there's an audience, and maybe they too want to get free. Maybe they too desire freedom for others, and especially in that space where I felt like we were a united front against all the bullshit. That was a heartwarming thing.
Now, you were censored a lot. You said a lot of stuff throughout the whole video, throughout the whole 3 hours. But that's one thing I don't know if a lot of people noticed. The edits were, when the video first came out, maybe like 2 weeks ago now, like, were y'all surprised at the amount of editing that happened? Because I feel like you were erased almost for the entire first half.
So when I first watched it, I was like, I watched it with my mother, and I was like, damn, I should give my mom a trigger warning. And then I paused it after like 5 minutes because she already got like, her eyes looked kind of teary, like red-eyed. And I was like, you sure you want to keep watching this? I should have told you. And she was like, nah, it's fine. So as we're watching it, there's like be moments where she was just like in utter shock. And I was like, oh, that's her nephew, my cousin, because my cousin crossed here legally, was fortunate enough to receive Nakara, so he was able to become documented, and he's a Trump supporter, believes in building the wall. So I'm just like, yo, those people are your nephew, like 100%, like fuck that, like, and I have no desire to continue talking to him unless he has room to invite healing to himself and healing onto others, because that's just like draining and exhausting to someone who's literally trying to harm you and the communities you stand for, live with, and fight for. So, I don't know. I felt like very disappointed in my performance, and then I watched it again later that night with my father, probably like 3 in the morning when he got home, and I was like, all right, cool. I felt like I was kind of sensitive, and then words of affirmation from friends assured me like, yo, that's not your character. You're probably sensitive, and then y'all as well affirmed me to me as well. So I was like, damn, bro, do I even love my people? All these goddamn books I'm reading, what is it for? I can't even fucking argue with fucking fascists who are fucking redundant.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
What about y'all?
I feel like, you know, es como es una rompecabezas, you know, like it's crazy because, like for example, when I have to address this comment about putting the tetas in the face, okay, like I'm not implying that another person has a right to infringe on somebody else's space. I did not like the fact that it sounded like she was calling us those ghetto girls, or, you know, like, oh, if you are from a particular perceived class, or if you are twerking, you're doing all these things, like she looks down on us. Like, by you being black, by you embracing black culture and doing things that have been passed down from Africa to the New World, that by you being like that, that means that you don't have any respectability. That means they can do whatever with your body, and this is what they have done to us from that period until now, where our body was not our own, where we were chosen to be mated and studded and all of those things. That's where these names like mulata, which means a little mule, comes from. You know, it's about the breeding factory that happened during enslavement. And we're still using these terms. People still have this perception. And if we have inherited some of these negative traits, so have they. They still remember the slave master mentality to this day, or aspire to be that, even though you may not be that.
What about you?
There's the first like 5 seconds they use the clip of me, and I really don't like that they use that, because it paints me as some dude that doesn't care about like American people. My whole point was I don't care about the paper that someone has, whether they have it or not. This woman was saying, oh, Americans, and I was like, yo, I don't care if these people have papers or not. That's not what gives someone their humanity. And then when I talked about Puerto Rico, you know, they didn't show this, but when I talked about the Jones Act, she was there, you know, there's the woman there, was talking about how, oh, these people, you know, all on welfare. I gave you the reason why they're on welfare. There's just, you know, the Jones Act affects economically the people, their ability to purchase goods while having the lowest minimum wage in the whole country. We're talking about colonies. They're not, American people think that Puerto Rico is its own country, but it's not. It's a colony, and it's still under colonial law. And you can see that by something like the Jones Act, by how the Puerto Rican people cannot vote during the main elections. How you can see, you know, Puerto Ricans, even though they migrate to the United States legally, they're killed for speaking Spanish. We have had cases of Puerto Ricans existing and being killed because they're perceived as foreigners, despite having a piece of paper that says American. So when I say, what Americans are we talking about? Because those Americans never include us.
There's a Puerto Rican man from North Carolina who was deported to Mexico. I think 2009, maybe. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. We have some questions here. Let me get to these questions. Telly Kingston saying I cringe when she said the blacks. It's so derogatory. This Beth is saying, did anyone ask the guy in the black shirt if his mother should have been denied and placed in a camp when she migrated here? I just don't understand how he can be against humanity. She also asked, the chick in the front with the pink top came off very selfish in the panel, talking about she don't care when her president says grab them by the pussy because she isn't someone who puts themselves there. I think she's talking about the the
Puerto
Puerto Rican
Rican.
girl.
Yeah, who's half white. The two white passing people are half white, and their politics definitely show that. Their class interests definitely show
The
that.
Puerto Rican girl is half white. I think the Mexican guy was half
Half
white,
white.
but he was born in Mexico. Yeah. No, yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're not walking down the streets perceived as foreigners. Like, they're never gonna be walking down even if they could be speaking Spanish, and people are just not gonna perceive them as foreigners. So, to me, they're just white Latinos.
Yeah. But I think to your point too, you talked about it being redundant. It did, like, my brother and sister called me the night the video came out, and they're like, "Why weren't you louder? Like, why didn't you say more stuff? Why didn't you respond to these people?" And I think I felt like maybe similar to what you were kind of saying, that I was like, how do I argue with this? Like,
Yeah.
how do you it's like using facts, and then people aren't like, one thing I wish they would have kept in the video. The Colombian girl literally said at one point that children in cages are fake news.
Yeah.
Like, how
That
do
was,
you,
that was like 15 minutes. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Like
yeah, it was
13
it
minutes.
was a whole thing, yeah. And I think at that point, you, me, I think Joey were like, what? Like,
Eric literally said, "You're a monster. Don't talk to me."
yeah.
I don't remember doing that.
That was my favorite.
But it's like, how do you begin to even argue or even address like someone like that? So at that point, I felt like kind of similar to you. I'm like, well, let me use this platform for the little bit that I can. And even the shit that I said, I think a lot of people just don't understand what the fuck I said.
That PhD.
Anyways, so let's talk a little bit about, I know that the comments has been like a big part of YouTube. You even made a video.
Yeah.
So if y'all haven't seen the video, you'll see, if you go see it on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's everywhere, that there's probably over 10,000 comments at this point when you combine both videos together. And most of the comments have been egregious, have been dehumanizing, have been violent, have been racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, homophobic. I mean,
All of it.
everything. So what were your kind of reactions when y'all first saw these comments?
I'll start. For me, it was very painful. I'm around a lot of supportive people. I have to say this as an artist. I'm an artist. I'm a performing artist. And I want people to know that people go through things in life. You don't know what makes a person increase or decrease in size, but that should not be the measure of my intelligence, of my character, of my ability. So for me, the most painful is that as I was looking in the comment section, I was saying the things that I said, the hard work that I do in this community, and the only thing that you take away from this is that you see my dress as a piñata. I'm an artist, I'm colorful, I'm always going to be without apology. But it was hurtful. That's why I had to speak out, because I think we all go through things for a reason, and there are people who have to live like this every day. So maybe I came to this point so I could understand what it's like, and I had to speak out for any woman who has been called a mammy, who has been teased for the way that she looks. And my platform, Latinx, is about loving the skin you're in. And if I can love myself now, I can love myself forever. So I put myself out there just
Absolutely.
so other people can love themselves.
And thank you so much for sharing that, and also for sharing your handle. Please follow everybody. You've made an amazing YouTube video. It's about 7 minutes long. I posted it on Woke Wednesdays. It's on YouTube. It's on your page. Please go watch it. I think you can talk about it. Extremely powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it.
Okay, yeah, I can talk about it. I called it No Soy Tu Titi. I'm not your auntie, because somebody called me Aunt Jemima because I was wearing my head wraps, and initially I was going to also include a section about the piñata, because I embrace that. When you break a piñata, it releases all this joy and colorful, happy energy. So I actually like those comments. But the Aunt Jemima, no, not at all. So I had to shut it down, and I did through the video.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about y'all? Reactions to comments?
Well, for me, so the first day I watched it, I knew it was gonna be right-wing stuff just because the creator actually warned me. She was like, "Yo, I'm just letting you know, a lot of our audience are right-wingers, so you're gonna get a lot of hate, especially because the way, again, they portrayed me as like I hate America, right? You know, they call my traje, they like what I wear, a costume. That's so disrespectful. It's not a costume. What I wear is what my ancestors wore. It's what my grandfathers wore. It's what my great-great-grandfathers wore. My great-grandfathers were part of the indigenous communist party in Colombia, and I'm proud of that. And they fought for their pueblo. They fought for their land, and I'm here fighting. Despite the fact that I live here, I will never forget my pueblo. That's something my grandma talks about. You're in the city right now, but you're from the pueblo. And really, when I was reading these comments, it just reminds me again of this false Latinidad, because a lot of times a lot of these comments come from other Latinos, saying, I'm an ugly indio. That word indio is such an ugly word. It's a derogatory word in Spanish that means Indian. But while we may use it amongst ourselves in South America, we don't like when mestizos or white Latinos call us.
Real quick, what's a mestizo?
Mestizo is just someone, in a native context, is someone who is politically white and may have native ancestry, but is also just a foreigner. Mestizo is just someone who is a foreigner, a lost person, someone who doesn't have a tribal identity, who's not connected to a pueblo, who lives in the city, who just doesn't care about the pueblo. It can mean a lot of things depending on where you're at.
And the term in English is, I think, miscegenation, and it literally means the mixing of Indian blood and European blood. It depends on where you are.
Well, yeah,
there's also Ladino is another term that.
Ladino, yeah. So the literal definition of mestizo is someone who's half native, half white.
Half European, yeah.
But in the context of the pueblo, it means someone who's politically white, because you look at me, I am part native, I am part white. I'm not gonna lie to myself and say I don't have any white blood in me. But I'm not mestizo. Why? Because I know my ancestors, I know my antepasados, I know my costumbres, I know my pueblo, and my pueblo knows me. And that's the big difference. I'm not politically white at all, and I make that a point to say that when I migrated here, I did not forget the pueblo. And so many Latinos, and you see it, that girl, she has no idea where she comes from. She may be Colombian by birth, but she's not from Colombia. She's not from the pueblo. She's a lost person who has no idea, who doesn't even know how to answer what race she is. That's how lost she is.
What's funny? I actually didn't have an issue with her not knowing how to identify, because not knowing how to identify already reveals something about how you identify.
Yeah.
When you don't have to think about it at a constant basis, it tells you something about this person.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm assuming about this person is that she came straight from Colombia to Miami. Probably hasn't really left Miami like that. So in this space, she is a white woman. In many ways, she speaks English.
Mm-hmm.
So within the borders of Dade County,
Mm-hmm.
unless you maybe go to Aventura, she's a white woman. So in many ways, so that's just like me thinking, because there was a point where I didn't know how to identify racially. I was like, man, I'm not white, I'm not black, like beige, khaki, I didn't know this stuff. So part of this is learning about it too.
Yeah.
What bugs me about her is that, like we've been saying, her politics are not just white. To me they're white nationalists. Those are her politics. She is a xenophobic, fascist person.
In the context of Colombia, though, people race in the United States is very different than race in Latin America. In race in Latin America, it is your politics that makes you white. You can literally be half black, go to Colombia and be white. You can literally be brown, go to Colombia and be white. You can be an African American, a dark-skinned African American, go to Colombia and be white. It's not necessarily how you look, it's how you dress, how you speak. Do you speak an indigenous language? Do you dress like an indigenous person? Are you politically black? Are you politically brown? The people in Colombia that get killed the most, and I'm talking about since 2016, 700 social leaders have been killed. All have been native, black, or someone who is an activist for the environment. Why? Because to be politically black or brown in Colombia specifically is dangerous. Your life is on the line. And for her, she comes from Cali. She's upper class. She's talked about having rich friends and her yacht and all these things. You already know where she comes from when I was speaking to her. She even told me about how her great grandma was native or whatever. And to me, I'm just like, all this just for mestizaje to get you, just so you can turn back on the people that are trying to survive, just like you. But you don't have to think about that.
Real quick, Telly King's saying to Amalani, yes, girl, turn it around, make it positive, good things come out of pinatas, love your spirit.
Thank you.
Hopeful Tears is saying, I wish y'all had Deja Fox. She was a Latina girl in the Vice Women Conservatives Liberals panel. She would have done good with the Latinx panel. I saw parts of it. Someone asked, why are y'all sideways? So we could fit everybody into the panel. And it uploads better to YouTube. So I'll be honest with you. After the recording of the Vice thing, I think it stuck with me for like at least a week or week and a half. Like, I remember talking to you two separately, like face to face, and like being like, yo, like, I'm still thinking about this. This was exhausting.
It was.
So did y'all kind of also feel that way?
It's so crazy because people think like that, but you don't know, like, they really, really think like that. Like, the stuff to us that seems like logic, to them, it's a different type of logic, alternative facts, as they call them, and they really live in this alternate reality. Because when he was talking about Mexicans and saying all of those different things, he was not just talking about Mexicans. Anybody?
Oh, Trump?
Yeah. Cuando tú hablas español, para ellos, tú eres mexicano. Like a lot of us
When
are
you speak
considered.
Spanish to them, you're Mexican.
Yeah, sorry, yo hablo Spanglish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, I didn't understand how you could immigrate to this country and then
And
be
his mother came
anti-immigrant.
here.
Like,
She crossed the border twice
Illegally.
illegally.
what in the world?
And he's supporting policies that would get her killed.
I don't understand.
Even though she probably already risked that for the borders that he supports.
One thing that he said that was weird was like, he said, hey, my mom worked at Taco Bell cutting up tomatoes. He's like, y'all might think that's funny. And one thing that we responded to at that panel, I remember you saying specifically, why would we think that's funny?
Right.
And then we all were like, that's honest words. Why would we think that's funny? But that was also edited out. So much stuff. I really wish that maybe would have been something. I don't know. Maybe I do wish. I don't know. They would have released the certain parts because it was just so much editing that went on. I think that was, for me, that was kind of tough to deal with. So what else? What else did we kind of think about?
No, I just want to say this thing about education, classism, that goes hand in hand with the racism. That don't think that just because we don't talk about, like what we've done, where we've traveled, and all of those things, that it just means that we're just like uneducated, don't know anything, in poverty. But then they talk about poverty like it's a negative thing. Like there are people who are impoverished. That doesn't make them subhuman. That doesn't make them less deserving of any right or anything like that. I feel like people should be respected for being people, whatever walk of life they come from, as long as they don't infringe and create harm against others,
I think a lot of things have been said. I think one thing that stuck out to me was your definition of mestizaje. And for me, like, mestizaje necessarily doesn't mean that you're appealing to colonial logic, capitalist logic, liberalist logic, but it means you have the path to go there, and that is shown through your class interests, which would define your politics. Because in Latin America, your class interests define whether you're going to be anti-black, whether you're going to be anti-indigeneity, whether you're going to be against people's rights to lands, whether you're going to be against poor people in general, as if it was not like a socio-economic issue that is created for people to profit and reap the land. And I didn't really get into the comments at all. All I know from the comments from my friends, like, that's why I said that message in the group chat we have. I was like, yo, like, whatever they're saying, fuck them. Those people aren't putting in work for the communities the way you are. Everything they're doing is little compared to the work you're doing, not only by putting yourselves in situations that do cause discomfort. And I use the word discomfort because discomfort is a serious issue, but it's not the same issue as our brothers, indigenous, mestizo as well, being locked up in cages at the borders, and our black brothers being locked up in cages, our brown brothers being locked up in cages, and sisters and others too, because Latinx, homie, gender neutral.
So, well, yeah, I completely agree with all of you. But also, since we're talking about mestizaje, I'll throw in my 2-bit too. I also think that categories can be used politically.
Sure.
And at times, I will take on a mestizo or whatever category I have to do in a strategic way. I don't think there's any. I think that can be useful. In fact, mestizo, for long times, we talked about this a little bit today. During colonial periods, yes, colonialism is still going on, but during former colonial years, this was used as a tactic to escape slavery, to not be sold into bondage. And I'm not gonna sit here and, I guess, who am I to speak on what you claim in order to escape bondage? Like, so the term, like most terms, can be defined differently at different points in time, different perspectives from where you're coming from. So that's just to kind of talk about that too. Real quick, we have some comments. Elizabeth saying, exactly, I think maybe he thought you would think it's funny because the kind of people he associates with think that's funny. Talking about his mother cutting tomatoes. But you all did nice hearing you all debate the truth and represent. Don't focus on the comments, it's always trolls. And then they're asking, hopeful tears asking for watching Democratic debates. Well, not right now. I'm gonna watch it after. And they're actually filming here in
Yeah.
So this Latinx thing, they went around at the end of, I think it was the end of the Vice thing, and they went around asking everybody what their opinion on this term was. And that's something that I've seen in the comments a lot, has been, don't use that term, whatever, like, most people I think hate the term, from what I saw in the comments.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And they cut off, I loved your response that you gave, but they cut off, I think, part of it. So I was wondering if we could kind of maybe go around and do our own little version of what y'all thought, what y'all think of this term, because it is rather new, and a lot of people just don't know about it. So Latinx, what is it?
So I'll go first because I was cut off at the end. So like, yeah, I watched that part and I was like, wow, I sound stupid because they cut off the context in which my last statement was said at the second part of the last video. And I said, I don't use the word Hispanic, primarily because it includes Spain and because it's something used by the US Census. It has nothing to do with any identity associated with Latin America, in the sense that Latino was created in Chile by someone from Latin America. And I will say that I did say Latinx because to say that Latin is gender neutral doesn't make you think like something like Latinx does. And I do want to be gender inclusive because in the sense that I do stand in solidarity and I do stand in struggle with femmes, women, non-gender conforming folks, queer folks, gay folks, however they may identify themselves and define their loves and relationships with others and themselves. So I think Latinx is very important. And for those who are like, oh, don't use that term, I've never heard that term. You've never heard a lot of things, and you might be trash. And we need to grow. Yikes. So force yourself to grow. If a little word bothers you, but little kids in fucking cages does not, then you are part of the problem. Just honestly.
Go ahead now. See, we won't edit this out. We'll keep that shit in. Yeah, keep that shit in. Go ahead. Yeah, love it. Yeah.
Okay, like to continue what you were saying about Hispanic coming out of the census, it wasn't just the census, it was this Louisiana Purchase. And the reason why they have this term Hispanic is because the Louisiana Purchase also, along with it, came the decision whether they would keep slavery or not. So Hispanic had to do with people separating themselves from other people of color. Because if you remember, during segregation, Chinese people, my grandfather who's from the Philippines was also considered among the people of color. So it was a broad category. So people would not be subjected to enslavement or certain other like laws of discrimination. They chose Hispanic as an indicator that they were white. Okay? So that's why I don't use Hispanic. It's not just Spain, but it has that historical context as well. Latinx, personally, I don't use it for me, but I respect it for other people. And I do use it publicly. I use it on my channel because I believe in embracing, like inclusive, gender inclusive, everything. So yeah, I respect it.
Real quick, someone said, "Now this is a solid conversation. They're loving it." And to your comment, period. They put period in caps lock, so there. And then someone else said, "Let them know." So yeah, good job. See what happens when you don't cut people off. There you go. But thank you so much for sharing that too. What do you think?
So again, I'm against the homogenization of our communities. So I personally don't like the word Latinx. To me, it just doesn't make sense. I will respect it, however. Someone tells me like, "Oh, call me Latinx," I have no problem respecting people. In my family, it's just not used. We're not Hispanic. If you call my family Hispanic, they will get mad. We're not from Spain. Don't call us Hispanic. Latino is a relatively new term. I'm fine with it because I moved here. And that's what people call me. But when I went back home and I said, hey, they call us Latinos, what is that? And they told me, oh, here Native Americans are something else. So I was like, okay. And so Latino was the word I grew up with. Now, Latine, I do use Latine just because it's practical in Spanish.
How do you spell it?
It's just Latin with an E at the end.
With the E? Oh, okay.
So to me, like, Latinx is just something, it's very United States specific. I respect when other people use it, but when it comes to like in Central South America, it's just not practical. You can't even pronounce it. So Latine, on the other hand, there are movements in Central South America that are trying to replace the A and the O with the E, and I 100% agree. We need to stand with our two-spirit, with our trans, with our non-gender conforming people, with how they identify, and I'm all for that. Just Latinx, it's just not practical. But during the interview, when Eric said like it makes people think, I totally switched my opinion as soon as he said that, because I was like, it does make people think, and in that regard, I started using it more and more because I don't think it's bad to make people think of people who just don't identify as cis.
I think like all social categories, you become that. I think you are conditioned to be that. I think you take these things on. Like y'all said, in Latin America, people don't use these terms. You become this when you leave Latin America and come specifically to the United States. The word Mexican was first used in the U.S. Census in the 1930s. And then Hispanic didn't come to the census until the 1980s, early 90s. Good book called Racial Formations. There's a lot of good literature out there on this. And then Latino and Latina have become more popular. And now in the 2020, they're actually thinking about incorporating some more stuff. To me, these are all social categories. Personally, I don't care what I am called, a Hispanic, Latinx, because we're talking about two things: how people want to identify and how you personally identify. Me personally, I don't care what I'm called. I will take on Hispanic in a space if it is to politically disrupt some type of oppressive kind of thing going on in that particular moment. So if I walk into a space, someone calls me Hispanic, and even though I don't like the term or whatever, and I think I can use it politically in a strategic way, I will use that. And I was talking earlier before the show, I'm from North Carolina. Most of my life, I've been called Mexican. Yes, I will take on, even though my family's from Nicaragua, I will take on that term and be politically Mexican in that space. I have no problem doing that. So to me, it's about how I can use that category politically for strategic purposes. Now, how people want to identify, when I use it to classify people, I usually use Latinx because for the reasons that you said it beautifully. So yeah. But again, to y'all's point, this isn't a homogenous thing. So everybody's gonna have a different perspective on this. I have a lot of friends who are very homophobic, extremely machista, and they hate the term Latinx for those particular purposes. You want to say something? And then I'm gonna read some comments.
No, I was just gonna say we did talk about mestizaje, but we didn't talk about Afro-Latinidad. And I think that's important. I think it's also important to acknowledge that there are various scales, or I don't know if that's the proper terminology, but there are various representations of Afro-Latinidad, and there's need for visual representation of Afro-Latinx people as well, not just with my complexion, but darker, with a different phenotype, because we don't see them in the media at all. To have an Afro-Latino who looks like, Victoria Santa Cruz, we don't see that all the
Even
time. Celia Cruz, Amara La Negra, people were saying, but I don't want us to feel like Amara La Negra is the only one, or like Celia Cruz is the only one, and sometimes it's painted in that way. We need more of that representation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Real quick, someone saying, I don't know the difference between Latino and Latinx, and why do you feel people dislike the word? Well, some of the reasons we just said, I think we answered it. Yes, the book is called Racial Formations by Omi Owainen. So
can I say something about the X?
Please.
The X is because Spanish language is very genderized, like say la mesa, el cielo, like everything
Which is
is
feminine.
masculine or feminine. So
It's a binary.
Yeah, and not only that, but all of us in this room, even though I'm a female, we would be called Latinos. So it would take the masculine form. Even if it's all women and one man, it would still take the masculine form. So to remove that type of gender polarity and masculine weight, that they put the X there to, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think in the Spanish language it does happen as well. Like I've heard it used in Argentina when I did a study abroad there. You know, I've heard it used in like Mexico, like Latinx. Like there's other forms. Sometimes you use the at symbol, the X symbol, the E symbol. You know, there's communities there aren't necessarily not homophobic or transphobic, but that's what community is there for, to grow. And when you choose not to engage in community in a healthy way, and that's when you become an oppressor. And one more thing, I would say like most of my life, I grew up in a Haitian neighborhood, Haitian neighborhood. I got called white. I never identified as white, but white became something more of a skin color. I'm very, like I said in the video, I'm very light skinned from the part of Nicaragua I'm from, which is called the Atlantica Mosquito Coast. And I do identify with indigeneity, Asian labor, and Afro Latinxness. But I will say, like, I'm teaching right now in Liberty City a beautiful program called Colors of the City.
Amazing
I would
program.
love for y'all to donate on Colors of the City.
Please, yes, talk about it.
It's
Yeah.
an artist residency for kids, not residency, but artists, 5-week program for kids to make art through different medium, youth to make art through different medium that will be put on a gallery. So, like, one of the kids was like, he's black, and like other kids, they use Spanish, and I grew up using Spanish too. Even with friends that I know now who are educated, depending on their class background, I will use the word Spanish with them to identify myself and others, even though I'm fully aware that I am not Spanish or I'm not identifying with the colonizer's identity. To be honest, and I'll share that. So I'm not like some hard ass who's like, if you're not using Latinx, you're a piece of shit, I don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I will be honest and say Latinx, like as alongside using the word Spanish, and that I think will cause a discourse and the engagement.
Absolutely. And Spanish is also like very, very slang.
Yeah.
Like I grew up saying that all the time. Especially, I used to go to New York to visit my friends. Everyone, literally, all these Spanish people. Like, and I didn't see anything wrong with it. But then you learn stuff. But I still use it for slang because not everything can be everything always. Go ahead.
Well, I will say is that there's a difference. For when you're from a first world, like we're constantly fighting erasure. I mean, even in the context of that video, no one knew where I was from. You know, when I said Bihal, no one knows where that is because
Let me type that out. Yeah.
Latinos don't even bother to learn the land that they're on. You know, they don't know any of the communities.
Man, that's everybody, bro.
No, that's not everyone actually. The first people here.
No, I'm talking about here in the United States too. People
Here
don't know
in-
what land they're on.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the context of the first people. So the first people bother to learn what we call ourselves. We bother to learn other people. When we go to other people's lands, we acknowledge, we ask permission. When I'm in any space, I ask for permissions from the Seminoles and Miccosukis here in Miami, in Florida in general. And other organizations do not do that. But first people always do that. Lakotas, when they came to Florida, they asked for the permission of Seminoles and Miccosukis, despite the fact that we're native. You know, it's always native people that are asking for permission from first people. It's always native people that are learning the history, the original history of this land. So when I say that, do not call me Spanish, do not call me Hispanic, it's because me and my family are constantly fighting erasure. You know, I'm not an Aztec faggot, which is what I was called a lot in that video. I'm not Mexican, I am Pijao. My identity is Pijao before any other identity. And that is important because I'm one of the first communities in Tolima. El Gran Tolima is my homeland, it's my ancestral homeland. People ask, why do I keep referring to that as home? Because my identity has to do with land. That is the difference between me and that Mexican. That Mexican that was sitting there, had no idea whose land they were on. He's a guest on this land. This is Seminole Miccosukee land, period. He's a guest here, he's a guest over there. You know, he doesn't know the history of the land, and I have a problem with that.
And I just want to say, for me, embracing my blackness and embracing Afro-Latinidad, I grew up like this. I always been wearing African clothes. And to me, I always been, like, obviously black, except for to other people. Like, I find a lot of rejection in different spaces. And just like I don't understand the conversation we had in the Vice Round Table, I don't understand why people don't understand my blackness. You know, I'm so down for my people. I'm so in love with my culture. And when I see my beautiful black mother, how could I hate that aspect of me? Yet I don't fit within the Latinidad, you know, like this stereotype of what it means to be Latino either. And I definitely don't fit in the Asian, you know, like with my, or South Pacific, you know, with my Filipino people. So I feel like, you know, que no tengo hogar, like I'm like in el medio.
From there.
Yeah, from nowhere. Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing that. Someone saying, Hamid Rack saying, I think there's something to be said about everybody on this panel being connected to the neighborhoods and locales in a way nobody on the right was. Your sympathy is rare and precious. So we're running out of time. So are there any kind of final things? We have like less than 10 minutes. Are there any final things that you would like to say that you feel that maybe was misconstrued on the Vice conversation, that was left out, that was edited out, that you maybe forgot to say?
I think for me, like, the most important thing was all the time we spent talking about anti-imperialism and talking about international issues, whether they were First Nation people issues or issues of country sovereignties, whether they were in Latin America, whether in Africa and Asia, and how the U.S. constantly impeded on those things. Like, at the end of the second scene, the woman in the pink blouse was like, you know, I judge people by their character. What your character would tell you your politics, in a sense, because if you believe in locking kids up in cages, fuck your character. That is your character. You lock kids up in cages. She was like, you know, I don't care about imperialism. The reason she used that word is because we spent a significant amount of time talking about U.S. imperialism, the history of imperialism, and the history of not only First Nation people resisting colonialism and imperialism, but the history of all nations of Africa and Asia rejecting colonialism and imperialism. Whether they practice that within their own territories is something that should be rejected again. But my position is here in the U.S. I have the ability to speak on U.S. politics because I was born here. I'm not going to be deported. They might incarcerate me because I've grown up being police. I've had friends who are incarcerated. I have family that's incarcerated. But still, like, it has to be clear that anti-imperialist work is domestic work. Anti-imperialist work is human work. And I don't like to use the word human because our ancestors have been rejected from that word for so long and are still rejected human rights. So I say rights of man, rights of working class, rights of the proletariat.
Real quick, let me read these comments. Thank you for sharing that. Monica Monster is saying this panel is legit. Triple Threat saying the shift in tone throughout this episode is worth noting. Glad you guys unpacked some of that exhaustion, toxicity from your experience on Vice. Never forget why you do what you do. We hear you. Monaco Monster saying the Colombian chick was weird to say the least. Mark Zoe is asking, did you all speak with them off camera? Before the show we did, because we were forced to, we were in a room. Then we started recording, we had a bathroom break. No one said anything to each other.
We were arguing and they had
during the break?
Camera.
That's right.
Yeah, they were like,
right.
save it for the
video.
That's when I knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then when it ended, that's when no one really said anything to each other.
We just
Well, we talked to each other.
Really
we talked to each other.
into two different
Yeah, we got it.
groups. Yeah.
Real quick, first gen students sending hearts. Mark Zoe saying goddamn Eric. Okay. Amalani, any parting words? Anything?
Yeah, like who knows why they chose the specific people that they chose, but one thing is I feel like it's an honor to be around some like really dope people, so I'm glad to be here. On another note, I'm a film director, sorry. Shameless plug.
No, why the shameless?
I'm a film director. I'm making a film. I'm looking for Afro-Latino people, Afro-Latinx people who are interested. You don't have to have acting experience, but I do not want to take the film out of Miami. I want it to be a Miami film. So if you're interested, holler at me.
Please
For
follow
food
her.
or whatever.
I tagged everybody on yesterday's promo video, today's promo video. Please follow everybody. These are all activists and organizers doing absolutely amazing work. Clearly they are brilliant. No fake news here. But yeah, you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say is, you know, when you like take the time to learn the land you're on, and not just like who was here, but also like the names of the trees, the names of the birds, the names of everything around you. Learn what these plants do. Learn what the first people around you are doing, and help them fight. Because when you fight for indigenous people's rights, you're fighting for your own rights. Just like when you fight for black rights, you're fighting for your own rights. Because we as people of color, when one of us gets rights, we all get rights. Another thing is, don't call what we wear costumes. So disrespectful.
No.
We don't wear costumes. We wear our pueblo. That's what we do. We remind people of the pueblo when we walk.
Real quick, what's Pueblo?
Pueblo means people, means community, means village. It could mean a lot of things depending on the context. But yeah, and you know, like I said, if you're trying to deport my family, I'm not gonna talk to you. But what I will do is I will say I agree to disagree, walk away, but I just won't be your friend. One thing that I did in the Vice interview was I did humanize rural white communities, and I'm very upset that they took that away because I made it a point that my politics aren't just identity politics. It's like class politics are important, you know. Poor white people are oppressed by the capitalist system, just like mestizos, just like everyone, you know. We as a people need to come together to defeat this capitalist monster that is oppressing us and is making us fight with each other. That means fighting anti-blackness, that means fighting against classism that affects rural white communities that feed the cities. I'm tired of white liberals looking down on rural white communities, you know. So again, fight for people, regardless of a paper, regardless of how much money they make. Fight for people.
Thank you.
So like Fred Hampton.
Vanessa Yvette is saying, I'm loving you guys, totally and completely, plug queen. The Curl Whisperer sending thumbs up. Vanessa Yvette saying, sincere Latinx culture in the heart. Mark Zell saying, I'm sorry I said his name. Even time the indigenous brother speaks, I feel a little bit more educated. Don't know what you. Like I said, please feel free to follow everybody. They're super smart. They're amazing, and they're just good people. And I think that is always great to be in the space of good people. 94 Earthly saying beautiful. And I think for me, when I spoke on the panel, I wish I could have been less academic. I really do. I had my hood moments, but that shit was edited out too. And whatever. I tried to come from an educational standpoint because I think a lot of people, that were going to be watching, I didn't know if they were going to fully understand see, this is why I can't deal with these people, man.
He's trying to make you more relaxed. You said I was less academic. He's making you less academic.
So,
that's a comrade.
This is why you can't hang with people, man. This is why you can't hang with people. You know what? I'm done speaking. Y'all have a good night. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tune in next week. Next week we are talking about immigration, children in cages. We have an amazing person from FLIC, Florida Immigration Coalition, on the show. Everything you need to know about children being locked up, people being locked up, being dehumanized. And also, Melissa could not make it tonight. She was a young woman sitting on the bottom left. Fuck no.
You gotta say it like that. Fuck no.
There you go. She really wanted to be here. She's an amazing, also just brilliant person. And I wish she could have been here because she received a lot of horrible feedback as well on the YouTube comments. But yeah, so thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see y'all next week. Thank y'all for being here. Again, follow everybody. I'll post a story here in a bit tagging everybody. So thank y'all for tuning in.
Hayaja.